Thanks so much for being with us here on Atlanta News First Plus. I'm Joy Lim Nakrin, joined today by a really special guest. We're so honored to have the Honorable Kimberly Bandoh joining us, who is a magistrate judge and also still does private practice as an attorney, including in immigration law. Thank you so much for being with us.
Yeah, of course. Happy to be here.
We're so happy to have you here, especially to talk about immigration, where I know that you're active in your practice. One of the top stories that we really want to talk about today is the Laken Riley Act, which has just passed. So we've been covering kind of the path of this act, this legislation, and what we can now report is that the House of Representatives passed this legislation. And it is now headed to the Senate, but this received some bipartisan support, people on both sides of the aisle, actually several dozen Democrats joining Republicans to pass the Laken Riley Act. And the inspiration, of course, comes from the killing of 22-year-old Laken Riley, a nursing student, a beloved student on the UGA campus, and the man suspected of killing her, Jose Ibarra, is believed to have entered the U.S.
On this
illegally
vote, the yeas are 251, the nays are 170.
From Venezuela, and had previously
on this vote, the yeas are 251, the nays are
arrested on theft crimes or accused in theft crimes. So just to kind of share with our viewers a little bit, the Laken Riley Act and Laken Riley's death actually became a topic of the president's State of the Union address last night. Let me just let everyone listen to a clip of that.
Laken Riley, an innocent young woman who was killed by an illegal. That's right. But how many of thousands of people being killed by illegals? To her parents, I say, my heart goes out to you, having lost children myself. I understand. But look, if we change the dynamic at the border, people pay these smugglers $8,000 to get across the border because they know if they get by and let into the country, it's 6 to 8 years before they have a hearing, and it's worth taking the chance of the $8,000. But if it's only 6 weeks, the idea is it's highly unlikely that people will pay that money and come all that way, knowing that they'll be able to be kicked out quickly. Folks, I would respectfully suggest my Republican friends owe it to the American people, get this bill done. We need to act now.
So you heard President Biden saying, get this bill done, we need to act now. And that was actually preceded by some, what some have characterized as kind of heckling by Marjorie Taylor Greene. I don't want to editorialize there. But Judge Bandoh, what do you think of this legislation, the Laken Riley Act, and do you think that it actually is going to have, a meaningful impact, provided that the Senate actually signs on to it?
I think that it will, to the extent that it targets people who are undocumented, who aren't supposed to be here anyway. But then there's also the other side of it, which I can see clearly, is that if you're just accused of a theft, you could be completely innocent of theft, and just the accusation alone will now get you detained. And so now you're automatically detained for something you may or may not be actually guilty of. So I understand both sides of that coin, but I understand the purpose is you're undocumented and you're committing crimes and you're not even supposed to be here. So I see the intent behind what the bill is proposing.
So yeah, and just to clarify for the viewers, essentially, I apologize if I didn't do a good enough job of setting this up, but essentially it would compel authorities to detain anyone who is, who is accused of a theft crime, who is in the country illegally, who's an undocumented immigrant, correct?
That's correct. It could be a Snickers bar, or it could be a $10,000 vehicle. Just any type of theft crime would compel local authorities to detain you. So not being released on bond, no issuing a citation, you will be detained until immigration would come, to ICE would come and pick you up.
And you made a really important point. You want to emphasize that this is based on an accusation. This is not based on a conviction. So we know in this country, innocent until proven guilty. So I could just say, oh, Maria works on, here in digital. Maria stole my candy bar, lock her up. So this is an accusation. There's, no evidence she didn't steal my candy bar, by the way. But there would, it really, the way justice typically looks like in this country is that there is a trial and then a jury decides, are you guilty or not guilty? If you're guilty, that's a conviction. And then there's a whole other course of action that takes place after that. But what we're seeing here, correct me if I'm misunderstanding, is that this is just based on an accusation that then such individuals would be detained.
That's correct. Just the accusation alone would be enough for immigration to detain you, and that's primarily because you're an undocumented immigrant. So it's like, innocent or not, you're here
Killed.
undocumented, and now we're detaining you.
And so you find that concerning?
Yeah, I do, because even if you're undocumented, it doesn't mean that you don't have any remedies or ways to legally stay for whatever reasons that you just hadn't taken care of that. So you could have a whole family that allows you to stay here, but based on the accusation alone, now you're fighting it from inside of a detention center instead of with your family.
Okay, here, and it's a very important point that you've raised here. I have, a point of confusion for me. I'm just wondering why this is focused on theft crimes when there are other sorts of crimes that I think might be concerning, such as other, maybe like an assault type crime, right? Or intimidation, that sort of thing. That, to me, that's the sort of crime that I think raises concerns about more violent acts down the road, such as, God forbid, a murder. What do you think?
No, I agree absolutely, because when I read and saw that it was theft crimes, I was like, just because I may or may not have shoplifted, now I'm automatically in this category that I'm a danger to the other citizens of the United States, which may not be the case. And I think the reason why they picked the theft charge is because he had been, the suspect had been arrested for theft. So I thought that was a little limited in scope and kind of short-sighted. Like, if it's a violent crime, I think those class of crimes deserve detention, but shoplifting a theft of a candy bar is a little extreme to me for what it's calling for.
Yeah, or even, like a false imprisonment, kind of like cornering
Exactly.
somebody in with your vehicle or something like that. An indecent assault, like a groping or a threat. To me, that sort of would be of more concern than shoplifting. But, I'm wondering if this does go forward. First of all, do you think it's going to pass the Senate?
I think that it may, because this is an election season,
Okay.
and so you don't want to look like you're soft on crime. And so I think a lot of our politicians are mindful of that in the back of their head. So I think it has a choice, but as we know, a different party controls the Senate, so we'll see.
Yeah, and even though this did get bipartisan support and 37 Democrats did, throw their support behind this bill, it is predominantly being supported by Republicans. I also am wondering if it does go forward, if there are going to be some changes made, sort of like what we're talking about. Could we maybe see some addendums, some alterations like these sort of crimes like false imprisonment or making a threat, that sort of thing could be kind of included to, be factored in?
Yeah, so I actually read the language of it, and it's absolutely going to be changed because a lot of the language was bashing the president, so I can't see Democrats not modifying the language
Right.
and taking it out and just making it straightforward about the crime and the law, and probably kind of revising what crimes would automatically trigger detention of an undocumented immigrant.
So I know that aside from being a magistrate judge, you have your own private practice. Immigration is one of your practice areas. So if a client, just suppose I'm your client, I come to you and I'm concerned about the Laken Riley Act affecting me, how do you explain this to your clients? What does it actually mean for everyday people?
So basically, you just have to, stay under the radar. Like, don't put yourself in a position
That's
where you can
right.
be accused of
But
any
how
type of
many
theft
of
crimes or any crimes for that matter, because you know that your status is undocumented. So at any moment, you could have the risk of being deported or detained.
Okay, yeah. And I also just want to ask you if you think that it could be problematic in some ways. Do you think, when you say stay under the radar, I hear that language, and do you think essentially that it could encourage people to sort of hide away? I mean, do you think that you have concerns about people wanting to avoid authorities? Do you think it's better for folks to actually work with authorities?
Yeah, so it does have a chilling effect. And it does, like right now in real time, if people are undocumented, they don't go out and protest and show their faces because they know they run the risk of being deported. And unfortunately, immigrant undocumented communities are targeted for crimes for those exact reasons because they don't want to report it because now the police officers are investigating and it comes out that you are actually undocumented. Now there is a provision in immigration law that's supposed to protect you from that you can find relief. So they want to encourage people to, make outcries when crimes happen, but a lot of people don't because they're afraid of the consequences.
Not worth the risk. Yeah.
Right.
So speaking of all of this, I do want to just share with our viewers an update, which is that another brother of the UGA suspected killer, and Jose Ibarra is the man who is accused of killing Laken Riley, but another brother has now been detained, and his name is Argenis Ibarra. What we've learned from U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement is that he entered the U.S. illegally last year, so he's being investigated. He was discovered during the investigation into Laken Riley's death. It's not clear if there's any other wrongdoing in his background so far. It seems that it's the illegal entry into the country that is the concern. Do you think that there could be kind of unfair scrutiny on relatives of this suspected murderer? Because we also know that Diego Ibarra is being detained right now. That's the other brother of Jose Ibarra.
Oh yeah, I'm sure there was a full ICE investigation and his entire family and any of his supporters if they weren't documented. Absolutely, yeah. Because of this crime, they're gonna hammer in and get the utmost scrutiny.
So, is it? And I asked if it was unfair scrutiny, or do you think it's justified? Because it seems also on the flip side that it would be important to get as much information as possible during the investigation, and maybe that could be a reason why these brothers are being detained. Is that true?
Yeah, I'm sure just in the course of any kind of criminal investigation, they want to know about the family and his resources and what his access was. So in this nature, because it's a death investigation, I don't think it is unfair because they need to make sure that everybody's safe and this doesn't happen again.
And because these two brothers did happen to enter the country illegally, there are grounds to actually detain them. Whereas, if I don't believe anyone in my family would commit some sort of crime like that. But if that happened, then they couldn't detain me.
No.
Because there's no basis for it.
Correct.
So, with the case of Diego, I want to just ask, because the allegations against Diego Ibarra, so this is another brother of Jose Ibarra. Jose Ibarra, again, is the suspected murderer. This is Diego Ibarra, who is in federal custody right now, and he was arrested initially for presenting a false green card to investigators. He remains in custody. There are some new details. Prosecutors are alleging that he may have ties to a Venezuelan street gang, and based on the tattoos and certain social media posts, which prosecutors say show him throwing up gang signs. Of course, criminal defense attorneys refute that. They say no gang affiliation, no evidence of a gang affiliation, et cetera, et cetera. In reality, does presenting a false green card land someone behind bars for an extended period of time, or is this unique because Diego is the brother of Jose Ibarra?
Yeah, it's unique. So if you're not charged with like a crime of violence, you can typically get an immigration bond to just the same you get as in a criminal case to fight your case and present any kind of relief or excuses or waivers that you may have. But because of who he is, he's going to probably be detained throughout the remainder of his case. I don't anticipate him getting an immigration bond or being released. Okay.
In your particular practice, do you represent folks who are, what sort of immigration cases do you take?
I do family-based immigration, and I also do deportation defense as well.
Deportation defense.
Mm-hmm.
And so what is kind of, are there kind of any parallels that you're seeing between cases that you often see and these cases that we're talking about?
So generally cases that receive any type of media attention, they're going to treat those more harshly because they don't want to give the impression that the federal government's being soft on crime. So they're going to go by the book, and by the book meaning they're not going to exercise discretion favorably. When in other circumstances, they might exercise it favorably if nothing else is problematic about your case. So that's definitely a difference in how these cases are being handled.
Interesting. So, in other words, in Diego Ibarra's case, a false green card is probably a pretty common thing, and it probably does not usually land people in jail for extended periods of time, is what it sounds like.
Yeah, because it's a non-violent offense, and so you could particularly you have relief available. You could file for some kind of waiver to say, yes, I'm here undocumented, but these are all the reasons why I should be allowed to remain here, and my crime was a non-violent offense, and it's the only thing that I did, and I was only doing it because I wanted to work. So you present all those mitigation reasons, and then that would be the reason that they would halt your deportation.
So I want to ask you, just because you're in, I'm so grateful that we have the opportunity to have a magistrate judge who is also an immigration attorney joining us. When you look at the Laken Riley Act, and you've already suggested maybe some potential changes in language that could make it more effective, what else do you think could be done policy-wise to really get at the issue? Certainly folks on one side are saying this is an issue of immigration. This is because we need to do a better job of tracking people who are entering the country illegally. If they have any criminal background, we need to crack down. And on the other side, some folks are saying, no, it's just an issue about violent crime. It has nothing to do with immigration status. It's an issue of violence, of violence, period, and violence against women, some people would say. What do you think needs to happen in terms of policy to kind of strike that balance and bring people together? What do you think some really positive policy, effective policy might look like?
I think effective policy would be screening, because unfortunately you don't know who's entering the country if you just do the catch and release. It is what it is. And I'm an immigration attorney, and I can understand that, and because I live here and I have children here and family, so I understand that. And I also think that there has to be a balance. You can't just go sweep up everybody, because everybody's not a criminal. Some people are genuinely coming here to make a better life for their families. So I think the policy behind it needs to be more tailored to what their intent is. So anybody that has violent crimes or a violent history should be screened out and deported. And if not, then I think that there should be a pathway, if applicable and if eligible, for that person to get some kind of documented status to remain here.
That is an excellent analysis, and shows your background. Any final thoughts on this?
I just hope that they tailor this bill to what they were actually, what the intent is, and to not just react because of what happened, but react in a way that is effective. Like, we don't want criminals in this country, and undocumented criminals in this country. We want them deported. Everybody can stand behind, we don't want murderers in this country, and especially undocumented. So let's just tailor that bill to what we're intending to do.
Well, I have another question for you, because if we're saying we don't want, especially murderers in this country, say someone is an undocumented immigrant, crosses into the country illegally, commits some sort of murder, either before or after their entry, if deportation is the answer, I guess my question is, what if they come back?
No, and that is the problem, because in one of these cases, the brothers, they were deported and then they just came right back. So it looks like they're going to have to amp up the border security to prevent people from walking across the border or however else they get here, to kind of enforce, like, you can't just walk into my country repeatedly when I've told you not to come back.
And Diego actually entered the country illegally twice. The first time allegedly punched a border patrol agent in Texas, and yet came in again. And claimed asylum, and then allegedly cut off his ankle monitor, and then moved here to Georgia. I believe it was from Colorado. So I guess my concern is that we could deport, but people can come back in. And then my other concern is, in their native countries, you don't want people who are violent criminals running around there either.
No, yeah, I agree absolutely, and it looks like they're having those problems protecting their own citizens in Venezuela, because it's basically in an uproar.
Yeah. Well, I guess we can't solve all the world's problems, but anyway. Well, thank you so much for joining us. And I do want to ask you, I know you're limited in terms of the cases that you can take because you're so busy as a magistrate judge, but, if we have viewers watching and they're interested in getting your help, your legal representation, what kind of cases do you want to take and how can people reach you?
Oh yeah, so obviously immigration and criminal. I do criminal defense as well. So if you need a lawyer, I am here to help you.
Okay. How do people reach you?
So you can reach me. You can obviously Google me, and my number is 770-997-5200.
Wow. Oh, my goodness. I think you're going to get a lot of phone calls. All right. Well, thank you so much, Magistrate Judge Kimberly Bandoh joining us. And we do want to let everyone know that on our website, atlantanewsfirst.com, we have extensive coverage of, the Laken Riley Act and all of these issues. That's atlantanewsfirst.com. Also encourage you to download our free Atlanta News First mobile news app. Thank you for joining us. Have a great day.